So welcome to the NLP UK Training Podcast and video channel. I'm Steve.
I'm Callie.
So what are we going to talk about first?
Well, we're going to talk about how can we design our careers around only doing the stuff that we love to do and getting rid of the stuff that we don't like doing. Is it possible?
I don't know. How do you go about it? What do you do?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks. So I've been rewriting my goal for the next kind of 12 months for my career.
Yeah.
And that's kind of got me thinking quite a lot about what do I actually want to be doing that will still generate a great income, but really fulfill all of my career values.
Yeah.
So doing what I love is really key for me. So my number one career value is being passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I do that I can do and I can do really well, but they don't really excite me. They don't really fire me up. So I've been thinking about how I can do less of that and more of the stuff that I love. Can I achieve it? I think it's definitely possible. I think there's always going to be some things that, you know, when you run your own business, especially, there are some things that just have to be done. No one, well, certainly not me, is ever going to love doing their accounts.
Okay.
But that has to be done. But for the most part, it's about what do we do day to day and making a decision where to put your focus.
Okay. So I can kind of relate to that because over the last few years, last 15 years or so, I've stopped doing some things that I didn't enjoy doing. And I've let it go. And I found that that's okay. And I focus more on doing things I wanted to do. But there are still things that we do because they're kind of tied in with other stuff that we like doing.
I think it's about really understanding what is important to you.
Yeah.
So there are some things that I do that are tied in to this, the other things, just like you. But it's about really understanding what doesn't light you up. Because when something doesn't light you up, that shows.
So what lights you up?
What lights me up is working with people that really want to create the life that they want to create, or create the business they want to create, or be the leaders that they want to be. Yeah. And are prepared to put the work in. Yeah. So actually for me, when I'm training, quite often it's not what I think I'm going to be training. It's those little pockets in between where that conversation is sparked and we might go off on a bit of a tangent, but actually that little thing is the thing that makes the biggest difference to that person. Yeah. So if I can make a difference to someone and they can go and use it, that's what lights me up.
And you sent me some emails that have been sent by some customers that you've recently worked with. And these emails were really long normally. And I said to you, gosh, I don't normally get emails that long from, potential from customers and from delegates. And the detail they went into, it kind of showed that they really got it and they were going to apply it. So I can see why that would light you up so much, because it would light me up so much. I think for me, what lights me up is when we do a demonstration, say, of a limiting belief change with somebody, and they're really nervous and they don't think they could set their own business up, or they don't think they could get the next promotion, or they think they're stuck where they are because they lack confidence and self-belief, or they may not know what that is. When after 20 minutes of doing the demo with them, they're like, a whole thing's fallen away. And they're like, well, what can you do now that you couldn't do before? And they're like, well, anything. Yeah. I just feel so light. And that's what really floats my boat when I see delegates doing that. And then I follow them up and they come along to our regular get-togethers and we listen to what they've been doing, give them some tips and some advice. And then they say, oh, I've got 4 coaching clients now. How did you do that? Well, I just told people what I do. And it's like, yeah, we've made a difference.
Yeah.
So I think it's making a difference with people in their lives.
Absolutely.
And enabling them to be successful in whatever success is for them, whether it be at home, whether it be at work, whether it be however they do it. But I've got a question for you.
Go on.
I'm sure you might be listening to Callie and watching her and thinking, well, it's all right for you. You said you're self-employed. I work for a major corporation and I have a job specification and I have to do what I have to do. And I've got a mortgage and 2 children and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. You know, I haven't got self-employed genes. I've got, you know, I'm work. That's what I do. So how can we respond to somebody who maybe is in that situation, which a lot of people work with are?
I think there's 2 things that come out of that question. One is, it's all right for me, I'm self-employed, I can choose what I do. So when you're self-employed, yes, I can make a decision about what I do, and that's absolutely on me. But there's still some things as a self-employed person that I have to do, like my accounts.
Yeah.
So there is a trade-off. Anyone can be self-employed.
Right.
It's not rocket science. Anyone can run a business. Not everyone can run a successful business, but it's easy to set up a business. And we can definitely support people that are looking to start their own coaching and training businesses through our Accelerate program. And that's one of the things that I love about making a difference. So that's definitely doable. So anyone can do that. There's no such thing as employed genes or self-employed genes. I used to be employed, now I'm self-employed, and that's fine. But also, can you do this when you work for an organization? Yes, I think you can. So I think it's about making sure, number one, that you're working for the right organization for you, in the right role for you, and really, again, just like you would do if you were self-employed, making a decision, what is it that I love? So the first thing is about getting really clear on where your focus is. So what is it that I want to do? What is it that lights the fire within me? And once you start to put your focus there, it's amazing how your filters just open up and you start to see opportunities that will allow you to do more of that.
But what if I'm, say, in a job and I don't like some of it and I'm not as fulfilled in some of it as I'd like to be, but I've got security.
So again,
and I like security.
Yeah, well, you know, security isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it depends whether it's holding you back.
Right.
So if that security is holding you back, it's what we call in NLP values elicitation away from value. So that's where you're kind of trying to stay away from insecurity.
Okay.
But actually what it does, it kind of acts like an elastic band and pings you back towards it.
Okay.
If you're not fulfilled, you're not going to be happy. Now, it is not your organization's responsibility for you to be fulfilled in your values. And your values are going to be unique to you. So the first thing is understanding what those are. And that's something that we teach on our practitioner and master practitioner courses.
And leadership training.
Leadership too.
Yeah.
And then really looking at what you can do to be more fulfilled in them.
Right.
Because, you know, you can go to your organization and say, you know, my number 2 values, career values, adventure.
Yeah.
So I could come to you, Steve, as one of your associates and say, Steve, I'm not fulfilled in my number 2 career value of adventure. What are you going to do about it? That's not your responsibility. That's absolutely not your responsibility. That's mine.
Yeah.
So it's about me finding opportunities where that value is fulfilled.
Yeah. I was talking to a leadership group of a company, one of the largest freight companies in the world. And we did the career values exercise, and some of the unconscious values came out. And a guy said, well, I'd like to earn more money, but I can't do anything about that. I said, what do you mean you can't do anything about that? And he said, well, it's up to the company to decide. And I said, okay, so what level of kind of income would you like? And he said, I'd like X, which is kind of similar to my general manager. It's okay. So you'd like to be at that kind of level? He said, yeah. So I said, well, what are the competences that you need to get from where you are now to get there? And he said, I need to get more experience in warehousing. So I said, is that doable? And he said, yeah. So we changed the responsibility, which we're going to talk about on another program, from him putting it on his organization to him taking responsibility. So I said, could you come up with a plan of how you can get experience in warehousing so that if opportunities came up, you'd have the competence to fill that gap? Because the organization will pay you what you are worth to them. So if you can take responsibility and work out what you're worth to them, then you can fulfill that, can't you?
How did that change how he felt about it?
He felt more it was in his control rather than they need to do this for me because it's up to them to do it, not to me. But his ingrained thinking was that, and it's ingrained in a lot of us, isn't it? Because we go to school, we see a careers advisor, we go to college or university or get an apprenticeship or whatever, and we're told, oh yeah, you'd be really good at this. You want to go and work in IT, or you want to go and do this or work in that. And we don't know what's available, what's out there till later on in life. And we see things differently. We put a different costume on. So yeah, I think there was a big shift in it being outside of him to being inside of him.
Isn't that interesting how just that one question from in a coaching conversation can have such a big impact on someone? Yeah.
So you think that if you're in an organization, it's still the same?
Yeah, absolutely.
Focus on what's important to you.
I think with regardless whether this is your career, your life, anything at all, if you're not fulfilled, if you're not happy, do something differently.
But some people don't realize, sorry to interrupt you, but some people don't realize that they're unhappy, do they? It's kind of, I'm going on holiday. We're going to Spain again this year for 2 weeks. We've paid for the mortgage. We've replaced the car, but we're slightly overdrawn at the end of each month. It's okay. They're not unhappy, are they? But they're not like you.
I don't think it's about being unhappy. You can be fine, but who wants to be just fine? I certainly don't want to be just fine. For me, it's about being the happiest and the most fulfilled I can possibly be.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we're only here for a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So I want to make the most of every minute.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And we're at work for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big chunk of our lives that we spend in the workplace, whether that's your own business or working for an organization.
Do you know, I got made redundant by a company a long time ago, and it was a great job, but I'd kind of fulfilled the project that they needed me for, and they had a new South African chief executive came in. He brought his own team with him. And I took the first role that came along with a company car and a similar salary. And in the first week, I knew it didn't feel right. In the first week. But I stayed there because they said they'd put me through a master's degree, which they did. And there were some other opportunities as well. But I knew in the first week it wasn't right for me. And when I look back on it, the reason why I stayed was because I had a limiting belief that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
And that kind of kept me where I was. I mean, I didn't know I had a limiting belief, but there was something that was keeping me from doing things that I really, really wanted to do. I mean, I was quite successful. I got, a nice detached house.
But again, it's
great
how you
life
define success, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think success is working towards something that you really want to do.
Yeah.
Or doing something you really want to do, whether it be, I want to be a journalist and I'm working towards being a journalist, or whether I want to be a writer, or whether I want to be a farmer, or whether I want to be a trainer. But as long as you're working towards doing something you really want to do, then I think that's success.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting that you knew straight away, your gut told you that inner wisdom was already there, bubbling away underneath.
Yeah.
You just ignored it.
I did.
What's changed for you?
Well, I got rid of my limiting beliefs a few years later when I did the NLP Master Practitioner course. And our sales, we've been doing pretty well, actually. We did both business consulting, business improvement, and leadership training. We had our own RLM center. So I'm talking about we. Somebody said to me, whenever you're talking, don't say I, say we. Then they'll think you're bigger than you are. And I said that to my mum one day, and she said, who's this we? I thought it was just you. And I said, no, we. So we were quite successful. We could pay the telemarketer, we could pay the accountant, we could had a decent standard of living, had a new lease car, an Audi A4, everything was good. But I found myself hanging on to stuff where I wasn't comfortable and having almost like a fear if something was cancelled in the diary and stuff. But I wasn't aware it was a limiting belief. But then I got rid of limiting belief on Master Practitioner because we identified what it was there. It just bubbled up. And the year after, our sales went up by 40%, which is pretty good, isn't it?
That's a good chunk.
That's a good chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good chunk. So yeah, I agree with you. Doing something that you really love doing, something that really fulfills you. And I've seen quite a few delegates over the years where one delegate came a Master Practitioner, and her aim in the first week, she said, was to become an assistant director of housing for the local authority she worked for. 4 weeks later, she came back. When she was doing a degree in housing. 4 weeks later, she came back and she said, I've decided that I don't want to be an assistant director of housing. I want to buy a guest house. Oh, you want to buy a guest house? Yeah, I want to buy a guest house. What about your degree? Well, I might continue doing the degree, but I'm really focused now on the guest house. Yeah. She said, I think that's why I paid for the Master Practitioner myself rather than getting the company to the authority to pay for me, because I secretly knew it wasn't my passion.
And I think that's really key. If we listen to our guts, if we listen to that inner wisdom, we know what we really want. We know what will give us what we need to feel fulfilled and happy. Yeah. It's about tuning into that and really listening to it and doing something with it.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to do what you're doing or do what I'm doing, and they want to do more of what they enjoy, what would you say were the steps they could take? So
I think the first thing is getting really clear.
I keep giving you these difficult questions that we're not prepared, are we?
So I think it's about, certainly this is how I approached it. So look at the things that you really love doing.
Yeah.
What is it that you have just got really excited by? And then look at the things that you kind of go, oh, I've got this on today.
Yeah. I've got you.
You know, when you do that,
yeah.
God, I've got this on today.
Oh, I've got to do this.
Yeah, I have to.
I've got to do this verification of these assignments.
Yeah. So those are probably the things that you need to do less. I'm not saying do none of, but can you delegate it? Can you outsource it if it's your own company? Do you need to do it at all?
Yeah.
Because quite often, some of the stuff that we do, we just do because we're used to doing it and it becomes a pattern.
Yeah.
So it's can you delegate it? Can you get rid of it completely? Or how do you replace that thing with the thing that you love?
Yeah. Can I tell you a funny story? It's a Zig Ziglar story, who was like the granddaddy of personal development. And there's a couple at home, and they both, apologies to vegetarians, but they're cooking a roast, and one of the guy's wife gets a carving knife out and cuts off the end of the roast, and the guy thinks that's a bit of a waste. Why did you do that? She says, well, that's the way my mum always prepared a roast, by cutting the end off. And well, that's interesting. Why did she do that? I don't know. Let's give her a ring. So they got the phone out and gave her a ring. Hi, Mum. Why do you always cut the end off the roast? And she said, oh, well, that's what your grandma does. She always cuts the end of her roast. Tell you what, let's ring Grandma. So they ring Grandma. Grandma, how are you doing? Now, we've got a question for you. We're just cooking a roast dinner, and Mum always cut the end off the roast. So I always cut the end of the roast. So she got it from you. So why do you cut the end of the roast? Does it make it juicier, or does it make it more succulent? Does it cook it better inside? And Grandma says, hell no. She said, it's just I've only got a small roasting tin.
So if you do what you've always done and don't question it, you'll get what you've always got.
But also people get into habits, don't they, of doing things in a certain way. One company I worked for had a document, and that they used to process their design to manufacture process. This document was called a page 2. And I just recently joined them, and I was looking at how they did things and how we could improve the processes. And they said, then we get out the page 2. And I said, what about the page 1? And they said, there is no page 1. It's just a page 2. So why did you just have a page 2? I don't know, but we just have a page 2 in design. That's what we do. So yeah, so I think you're right. Maybe questioning the way we do things and focusing on things that are the most important to get us the best results and enable us to become more effective.
And I think once you put your focus on those things, you start to see more opportunities to do it.
Yeah.
Just by simply making that decision, that's what you're going to focus on, and keeping that in your mind, can have a real impact. But also, one of the things that I did recently was actually write that down as part of my goal.
Yeah.
So I write a new goal every year. And this year that goal is all about, what is it that I love to do? How can I get more of it? And I've broken it down into real detail so that I can see exactly what I need to do in order to do more of the stuff that I love and less of the stuff that I don't love.
Right.
So that's formalizing that focus. And I read my goals every single day. And because I'm reading it every day, it's always in the forefront of my mind. And then it's about taking action. How will I make this reality? So the next step would actually be writing out your action plan in order to take those steps. Because if you do nothing, nothing's going to change. So, it's all very well saying, put your focus here, but that's not the only thing that you need to do.
I agree. But what I do is I think, what direction do I want to point myself in? And then I point myself in that direction, and stuff happens that comes from nowhere, and ideas bubble up that come from nowhere. And I start doing things, and things start appearing from nowhere.
Absolutely.
Like, I tell you what it's like. It's like, can we talk about the doorman, or should we do that another time?
No, we can talk about the doorman.
Well, we'll talk about the doorman. So, Dawn, my wife, decided to trade in her very old car, and she leased a car called an Ago because she thought that it would be useful for someone else to learn to drive in it. And so she got this red Igo. I'd never seen one before. There's thousands of them. In Ashby-de-la-Zouch, where I live, it's like God came down and put them all in Ashby-de-la-Zouch, and they're all red. They're everywhere, but I'd never seen them before.
Where did they come from, Steve?
They came from the sky, and they landed on the road where we live, and I've seen the odd white one and blue one as well. But my point is that I didn't see them before, but they're there now. And so you're right. Once you have a goal, your doorman opens up, your filters open up, your spam filter opens up to allow more information to come in. And the ideas pop up and you see things that you hadn't seen before when you write the goal. I did it with with a house and a job and a job level of salary a long time ago. And 2 years later, I was doing a different job in a different company with that level of salary and with that kind of house. But it had to be something that I really wanted and I was passionate about it.
I think that's really key. You've got to really know what you want, and you have to want it enough to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying, Steve, is that the steps to really getting this right, whether you're with an organization or self-employed, it's about deciding what it is that lights you up.
Yeah.
Understanding what it is that doesn't light you up. So making that distinction first of all.
Yeah.
Then really formalizing that. What is it you need to do more of the stuff that you love, less of the stuff that you don't?
And it might not happen overnight, you're saying?
Absolutely. It might take time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because every time you take a step towards it, you will feel better and better and better.
Yeah.
So writing out your goal.
Yeah.
And then having an action plan to make it happen. So 3 really simple steps. Decide what it is that you want.
Yeah.
Write out your goal.
Yeah.
Take some action.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sounds really simple.
It is.
It's a great thing about life, isn't it? When you break it down, it's not rocket science.
No.
So I think that kind of concludes this episode of our podcast.
Yeah.
We'll be back next time with even more great stuff for you.
See you next time.